those emails on here as well. Any questions for me regarding the process or the board?
Okay, well, thank you for that, Lorna. Next item of business is reviewing our nominations. We have 3 to review today, and we will begin with the Harvey High School nominee.
Just a second. Emily or Royson, which are you able to?
Hi, I'm Royson. I'm going to present the nomination today, but I'm wondering if it might be easiest to use exactly your screen, just so we don't have any technical difficulties. Can you all see that there?
Yes. Yes.
Terrific.
So you see me, but I have 2 big screens in my room as well. So those present get the enlarged
good.
view.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Royson Yunkin. I'm historic preservation consultant. And my colleague, Emily Dominiani, and Emily is also here on the meeting today, prepared the National Register nomination for the Harvey High School. And if you want to advance that next slide, we can jump right in. To give you a quick sense of the location for those of you who aren't familiar with Harvey, it's located in Wells County in north central North Dakota. And very specifically, it is located at 811 Burke Avenue, which is on the southern part of the city. Next slide, please. The Harvey High School is significant. We are nominating it under criterion A. It is associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of history. Specifically, the areas of significance are education and government, and the period that was a local level of significance to the city of Harvey. And the period of significance is 1923 to 1961. And as we go through the presentation, that will become more clear. This is a building that expanded over time, that began with a block constructed in the extant portion of the current facility in 1923, and had a major addition in 1939 and a final expansion in 1961. And let's see, I'll take the next slide, please. In the area of education, the Harvey High School is significant, specifically with the development of the educational system in the city of Harvey. This was the only school building in town for all grades, beginning in, we'll see the developmental history, but with the current building in 1923, until a separate high school building was built in a different part of town in 1969. Mm-hmm. So the building's expansion over time represents the growth of the city, its population growth, and the evolution of its system to meet the demands both of the growth of the city of Harvey, but also regional school consolidation. And this was a trend that is reflected broadly in North Dakota as well. Next slide, please. A second area of significance for the Harvey High School is government. Lorna mentioned the federal relief efforts context that was produced fairly recently. The 1939 addition to this building was funded in part by the Public Works Administration in 1939. That was a large classroom addition and gymnasium. And so the building has significance for that association as well. Next slide, please. So quickly, I'm going to give an overview of the development of the city of Harvey and its public education system. And this begins in the late 19th century. The city of Harvey emerged because of the Sioux Line Railroad, which was extending across North Dakota in the late 19th century. In 1892, you see a picture on the top right, the railroad constructed a dam across the Cheyenne River at Harvey. And that really was the instigating moment for settlement of the area. This settlement began in 1893, shortly after the construction of the dam, which became a division point on the railroad for the Soo Line Railroad. This is where crews changed. It's where engines were serviced. And many of the early inhabitants of the city were employees of the railroad. It was officially incorporated as a village in 1903 and then as a city in 1906. And the bottom slide there is a picture of the depot and the Soo Line Railroad. Next slide, please. A couple of images here of what that looked like. The top photograph is the city or the village of Harvey around 1900. And on the bottom right, on the bottom slide, excuse me, it's 1909. So early settlement was really focused south of the railroad tracks. And you can see from the top photograph, this was largely pretty small buildings. It was frame construction, kind of hastily put together. But already by 1909, the city had become quite mature. It had a very established commercial center. Its buildings were more permanent. You can see some masonry construction, more than 1 or 2 stories. There were many local businesses and churches. The town had a newspaper, banks, hotel, restaurants, and opera house. It was really a bustling community. And even in its early days, there were efforts to educate the youngest members of the community. Nothing is extant from that period, but as in many areas, education began in kind of moving around into various buildings. So initially, local histories point to school being held with a couple of students and a tutor in a hotel building, later in a church. There is a local reference to an 1896 building that was specifically a purpose-built school. I was not able to find evidence of what that looked like, but in all likelihood, at that date, my guess is that it would have been a small wood frame building like the school buildings that were dotted all over North Dakota at that time. Next slide, please. This was the earliest public school building in the city of Harvey, purpose-built. That is, we have a photograph of. It was a graded school building. So instead of building a building that just housed everybody, all the grades, all ages in one room, there were divisions by classrooms and age. It had what were considered to be modern features at the time. It was constructed of fireproof materials. It's masonry. The windows were fairly large for the period that allowed in a lot of light and ventilation. And you can see in the photograph here, in relation to the buildings next to it, it really was an important building in the town. It's a much larger scale and more permanent building materials than many other buildings that were constructed at the time. And it's fairly ornate, indicating kind of the pride of the town in its education. And you can see the bottom is a Sanborn map that dates from 1904. So we don't have an exact construction date, but we know that it was here by 1904. And while this portion of the complex is no longer extant, this is the location of the current building. Next slide, please. Here you see an image on the top of an extension of that early building. In 1906, there was a large addition added to the north end, which expanded the building considerably. The high school students moved into that northern addition, and the younger students were in the rear of the building. And the addition included a gymnasium, bathrooms, a band room, and vocational classrooms. So this is really a building that is evolving as education evolved, providing things like vocational training, providing band spaces for music and play. And on the bottom, you see some images of the expanded school building on the Sanborn map, the 1909 high school band, 1911 some playground views, and the 1916 basketball team. Next slide, please. Okay, here we have the beginning of the development of the present school complex. This is the Harvey High School. In 1921, Harvey expanded its school district beyond the immediate city limits and brought in 4 adjoining school districts. That consolidation resulted in a larger school population than the previous building could manage. And there was some indication in local reports in newspapers that even at that time, before the consolidation, students were being housed in overflow spaces like the local hospital. So this separate high school building made a big difference. It was constructed immediately next to the early building, the 1904-1906 building. It was completed in 1923. And we have a basketball team image up from the early 1920s and the graduating class of 1925 as well on the bottom. Next slide, please. The next major component of development for the complex occurred in the 1930s. And that was in large part due to just steady population growth from the period when the high school building was built in 1923. In Harvey, the greatest period of growth happened between 1930 and 1940, population growth. But during the 1930s was really a period where, despite the need for school expansion, there was just not the funding for major projects. It was cost prohibitive for many towns across North Dakota, including Harvey, which is why the Public Works Administration grant was so transformative for Harvey in particular and other cities and towns across the state. So in 1939, the city of Harvey received a grant that would cover half of the cost to update the school plant. And here you have an image of the 1906-1904 building, and you can see just behind it the construction of the 1939 addition. And part of what the grant covered was the demolition of this early building because the city felt that it was unsafe and unhygienic at that point. Next slide, please. And so as part of the PWA grant, the demolition of that early building occurred. There was also a renovation of the 1923 high school building. And then the largest visual indicator of what the grant provided was a 2-story addition that you see pictured here that provided 14 new classrooms. And you can't see it in this image, but we'll see later images of a new gymnasium and auditorium building, which was built essentially on the footprint of the 1904-1906 building. And then you have an image there of what that looked like on the map. Sorry, did I hear a question? No, okay. The Sanborn image and the 1930s basketball team. This was an important space, not only for the expansion of the school, but it was an expansion of a building for community use. Having the theater, having the auditorium made the space appealing for the town for lectures, for performances, for banquets. There was even a night school for farmers that was widely attended at this time. And they held a canning center that drew families from many, many miles away. And that was all because of the funding from the WPA era grant. Next slide, please. To give a little context of the WPA in Harvey and in North Dakota, school building was really a large component of the federal grants. In North Dakota, between 1935 and 1943, the federal funding supported improvements to about 1,500 school buildings across the state. This included new buildings, entirely new buildings, and also major additions like we saw in Harvey. And the Harvey addition was one of a few grants and improvements that came to the city. There was also the construction of an athletic field, a field house and clubhouse, pump house and memorial, and some golf course improvements. That was all part of the federal funding. And the image that you see there, is from the newspaper published in 1937 in the Bismarck Tribune. That's difficult to read, but those are all the schools that had been constructed across North Dakota in 1937, by 1937. Next slide, please. And the final expansion of the Harvey complex came in 1961. There was another school consolidation effort, the first one since 1922, where additional rural districts in Wells and Sheridan County were added to the Harvey district. And so once again, that meant a greater population than the existing school could accommodate. So a 2-story addition was built in 1961 to the north side of the 1923 building. That added 12 more classrooms. It added laboratory space, offices, a few multi-purpose rooms, kitchens, and bathrooms. And those are some slides from the 1961 yearbook. Next slide, please. Okay, so the Harvey High School today. There have been alterations, as we've seen, and we can talk about those more specifically. But overall, the building retains, we believe, sufficient integrity to convey its use as a 20th century educational building, one that evolved over time to meet the specific needs of the city of Harvey as its educational needs grew, as the city grew, and as rural consolidation increased its population. Next slide, please. In terms of location and setting, the building's relationship to its site and surroundings are unchanged. And it's a residential neighborhood that has minimally altered. You still have a sense of a school building that served the local residents. Original windows have been replaced and alterations were made for later accommodations or later additions. But all 3 components still retain their characteristic massing, their roof lines, the brick and concrete ornament. The most notable change is to the entrance of the 1923 building, which was changed around 1961 when they were expanding and wanted to make the entrance area more classroom space. Next slide, please. The interior of the building still has wonderful character defining features, including its original spatial layouts and historic finishes. We see terrazzo floors, decorative stairs, wood trim, windows and doors. And the gymnasium in particular has its original volume. It has its detailed proscenium arch, the stage at the one end of the building, and the concrete bleachers, which are partially visible in the slide on the right, the image on the right. Next slide, please. The overall feeling and association of the high school building, despite some alterations, is of a 20th century education building because its additions are each very distinct. It conveys the need of the town to expand over time. And I think that might be the last slide. Yes, I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has about the building or its history.
Thank you for that. Are there any comments from the board for discussion?
I have a question, and this may be a question as much for my fellow board members being new. There may be something I misunderstand, but I'm wondering why this would not be state level significance rather than local, because we saw that map of how there were schools all over the state that followed a similar pattern, and so I'm just wondering why that would be local rather than state significance.
I can speak to why we suggest local, and then Lorna, if you have something you'd like to add, I'd be happy to hear it. In this case, this was an important building to the city of Harvey. It is the only school building in the city and was the only buildings until 1969. So while it's part of a kind of a broad pattern across the state, it was uniquely significant to what was happening in this particular town in terms of consolidation, school consolidation and population growth. And that would have been happening in other cities and towns across North Dakota, but the way we viewed it was that it would be locally significant.
Sure, thank you.
And then as far as the PWA example, you would have to do a comparison of every PWA
I see.
building to say statewide.
Sure.
And say, yep, it's XYZ. And I can say that of that particular styling, there are some more examples, so you would still have to make the case. And Royson's absolutely correct that the audience of who this building impacted was
Sure.
critical.
And she does relate to the federal construction of North Dakota as a related property, multiple property listing. So additional information can be inferred if you refer to that as well.
Sure, great. Thank you.
Any other comments?
First off, I would like to say that I really appreciate the fact that you used the growth and the changes of the school to support the integrity instead of hindering it. Because I do think that the evolution of the education and why the school was changed over time is first off interesting and pivotal to the building itself. But the fact that you could still look at the building and still kind of piecemeal what dates go with what sections of it, I think actually helps the nomination. So I'm glad that you used it that way. I do have some like grammar technical things throughout the report that I'm going to give to nomination that I'm going to give to Lorna. It's nothing substantial. It's all little things, like sometimes classroom edition is used as formal and all capitalized, and sometimes it's lowercase. And I just like it to be consistent. I did have a question, and give me just a second to find it. Actually, I think you answered it in the presentation, but I just had a question about whether something was historic or modern in the text. And I left a note, so if you would just clarify it in the text, that would satisfy me.
Absolutely
I also
happy to.
noted some odd spacing on the map page, and I know Agatha saw it as well.
Yeah.
The label is on one page, and then the map is on a completely different page, but the label's like in the middle of the page, and if you scooted it up, you could probably.
Or change the size of the image just fractionally sometimes.
Yeah.
Things.
Yeah, and then there was just a couple of little spelling things. Harvey with an R somewhere in there. Nothing major. It was a very well written document as far as I'm concerned.
I
Thank
would
you.
agree, and I'm sure a lot of our comments are probably the same. Just a few architectural terms. Pavilion, I see that used a couple times throughout the paper, and usually when I refer to a pavilion, it's more of like an open detached structure. So when you're talking about it at the entrances, perhaps like at the older building, I don't recall if that was covered or not, but maybe we had that big substantial stairway going into it, so maybe like a pairing could be used there, or portico, you see that where on the schoolhouse that was demolished, and it had that covered roof over its entry. I would also maybe comment that older schoolhouse was Richardsonian Romanesque architectural style. Tudor versus tutor was another just editorial comment that I think is kind of an important one to make. And I'll pass these all along to Lorna. And then one other quick question. My biggest question is, why are you not saying that this has architectural significance? Because we have three very distinct architectural phases that are in here. And I don't know much about Ellinger, but just a quick search, it sounds like he was from Havre and then later practiced in California. I am more familiar with, what was the second architect? Hogan, something like that, right?
The second one is, Bogenhagen.
What's that?
I was just commenting that the architect of the 1939 was George Bugenhagen. I don't know if that was the name you were reaching for.
Yes. Yeah, and he was worked in Minot, but also in Saskatchewan, and was fairly prominent in both of those areas. And then the Wells Denbrook firm was also a very prominent architecture firm. So I think with at least with the latter two, we definitely have the opportunity to argue that those are kind of masters of their trades. And then it also goes along with, with school districts, you're always kind of, or with school design, you're always kind of trying to advance and kind of reflect the times. And so, and policy changes and things like that as well. So I would think that might be another argument that you could use for criterion C, but I just wanted to see why you didn't do that.
I'd be happy to discuss that and pursue that if the board thinks that makes the most sense. We were concerned in terms of architectural integrity from the exterior as a whole, because there had been a number of alterations which are reversible and I don't think detract from integrity, but nominating it for its design when some of those elements, key elements were missing, was something that we weren't sure would make the grade for design specifically. But I agree with you generally when I nominate school buildings, the layout of the plan, it does reflect pedagogy, and we didn't have access to interior historic plans. So I'm happy to pursue that if the board would like to see that, but that was the rationale.
I do have one more comment about the plans there. I've documented a number of Wells Denbrook properties, so I'm quite familiar with their work. And I do know that there are plans in the UND Special Collections from 1960 and 1966. So possibly that stairway was removed in 1966.
Yes.
So that might be worth exploring to see if the plans help you in that department.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Remind me, there's a Wells Dunbrook something, is it a multiple property?
I think it's a context.
Context,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah, there is that Wells Denbrook context report by Steve Martins, which I don't know if that was referenced in here, but he also, I think he might probably mentions that the blueprints are available for two different projects with the Harvey School as well, so.
I did reach out to the library for the plans. I'm in Massachusetts, unfortunately, so I was not able to access them, but I would be happy to try that again.
Sure. That was pretty much all I had for comments. Are there any other further comments, questions from the board?
I had a question. It's actually more for Lorna, and I just want to cover my bases. The federal relief multi-property documentation. It's referenced up here, and the federal relief is discussed in the text. There doesn't need to be any we meet the criteria of that nomination because in here, does there?
So have to know, our individual reviewer who handles North Dakota has mentioned she appreciates when it's hammered over the head, because she doesn't want to feel like she needs to go back to clarify in her own mind and get back into the other document. So she does find it helpful, but it is not required.
Okay. So it might be helpful, but I'm not gonna hold your nomination up because of it. But there is a pretty good relief construction that if you wanted to go through and say, we meet these criteria, it would help bolster your nomination, in my opinion.
And Lorna, what were your thoughts on the architectural as another criterion since the changes have been made?
But it was definitely something thought about, and I was leaning more towards the way Royce and Emily typically went with it. That
Okay.
When you do the architecture, you got to do to date
Sure.
builds. So not that we can't do separate periods of significance, but I didn't have enough information to really make a case for the 61 when we were reviewing this to get it on the agenda. Of course, we have more information about the 39, but also those changes. So I was leaning the same way that Royce was.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, if there is no further discussion, is there a nominate or a motion?
I have a quick question. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
So this is more just a question about writing practice, because I haven't in my short time on the board, I haven't come across this. In Section 8, page 11, the brief history of public education North Dakota. You've got a footnote saying that this summary was taken from a previous report. And so I just wanted to double check that that is like, this is a common, okay, practice to do. I think it's well written and appropriate. I think my other question with that is that later on, you do a really nice, thorough job of including citations, but this one section, it has that citation of the report that it's being taken from, but then there are no other citations for that information.
One thing I will add, it was that report was written by my colleague Emily, so it was actually a little bit tricky in that regard because normally I would not kind of whole cloth do something like that. But we had written this together, and that was hers from another nomination. So however you'd like me to deal with that, I'd be happy to. It was a little bit tricky.
Yeah, and I caught that the authorship aligned, and that's why I'm. So I'm just, maybe this is a question for Lorna, who has more experience. I'm not, like, what would be the best practice in this regards?
So, I mean, we've seen it a couple of ways. Citing it's always good to just add that citation if you're pulling the particular things. Previous nominations, assuming, I think I know which one she's referring to.
It was the Mandan High School.
For the Mandan High School, yeah. So it has been listed, it is formally documented, so it would be real easy to just add that reference a little more clearly, but that's where that came from. So it's really case by case, whatever we feel we can find the information. It's one of those funny things about citing yourself type of things too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's clearly demarcated that section is coming from the previous report. But I'm wondering if that in that original report, were there other citations in that section
I see what you're saying.
Copied over?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Because I do think that you're citing that report, but there's a little bit of a lack of citation within that section that I think would be good. And I
can definitely clarify that.
Yeah. And I just wanted to overall double check that this is an acceptable practice. I mean, I don't see any problem with it. You're citing your source, and you've got, one of the authors from that section is authoring this. So
yeah,
I've actually never encountered this before. It was a first. Okay. So I'm happy to, any guidance is appreciated.
Yeah, I'll have to look at the part in particular. Typically, since she is pulling it from the other formal nomination, she can just cite that nomination. But where that gets a little tricky is if there's a quote within that you want to attribute it as quoted within.
Right.
So my recollection was this was all her writing without, this is my recollection of it, that I was not, there were not some other indicators in the text that I didn't bring over. That's my recollection, but I'd be happy to make sure that's the case.
So then is the whole section essentially just copied and pasted from the other?
That particular section, yes.
Okay. All right, that was my comment.
So we'll take a look at it.
Rick, I don't want to did you have any additional comments before? I don't want to give the people that are virtually attending any or overlook any comments they may have.
Sure, just one small one, and maybe it's just my version of Adobe being weird, but I'm on section 9, pages 24 and 26. The maps aren't showing up on mine. Maybe they're there and they're just not showing up on mine, but I see the map 2, but maps 1 and 3 don't seem to be included there.
Okay. I know on my version, they showed up.
I'm missing one of them.
You're missing,
So I need something with a PDF.
some, you were missing some. Okay.
It could just be that the government Adobe system maybe just doesn't like the format. I don't know.
Yeah, mine are showing up too. So let me know if you need me to send you something different.
Okay, yeah, I'll take a look. They were there.
I figured they were. I figured it
Definitely.
was just my software version being weird, but yeah. Other than that, I thought the chronology and the contextual linkage and all that was great. I appreciate the thoroughness of this nomination.
Thank you.
Right? Is there a motion?
And then just to clarify, there will be additional discussion after. Yeah. Okay.
I move that the nomination be accepted pending some additional changes for grammar and remember the full language was used.
I mean, the minor edits as discussed by the board.
That's it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so the board, do we do the further discussion now then?
Yes.
Okay, any
Yeah.
further discussion?
Yep, and I will, excuse me. Let me get a second. The school board did send in a letter of comments. Just a second here. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can get into my email. Should have printed this one.
And this is another one that's gonna be stuck in a queue until it's open again.
Yes, but with the minor edits, we'll get it ready to go, assuming the authors are on board with that, and so that the day they tell me it's open again, I can just
Put it in the backlog.
Yeah. Yeah. So the letter is from Harvey Public Schools to our director, Bill Peterson. I'll just go ahead and read this. So, dear Preservation Officer, on behalf of the Harvey Public School District, this letter serves as a formal objection to the nomination of Harvey High School, now known as B.M. Hansen Elementary, on the National Register of Historic Places. The district acknowledges that notice of the nomination was received. However, our school district has substantial concerns over the financial constraints and limitations in our ability to make necessary improvements without going through an arduous approval process. We feel that it is important for our district to have the autonomy to make any improvements to our facilities that we see fit. While the district respects and appreciates the historical value of our community's facilities, flip pages there. It must be emphasized that Harvey High School is an active educational building, not a museum. The school serves scores of children daily, and its infrastructure is now beyond or nearing the end of its functional lifespan. The district's ability to make any necessary improvements or changes to infrastructure should be in the sole discretion of the governing body. Unfortunately, certain individuals and entities have invoked the National Register nomination with little to no transparency to our district and its governing board, seeking to block reasonable and necessary facility improvements. The Harvey School Board, as the legal owner of the property under North Dakota Century Code 15.1-09-33-8, objects to any application of this designation that restricts or conditions the district's ability to renovate, modernize, or rebuild the facility. The district respectfully requests that the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service reconsider the nomination for the National Register. While our district is flattered at the notion of one of our buildings being nominated, the educational needs of our students must come first, and we do not believe such a designation would be in the best interest of our students at this time. Should such a nomination that was developed with input from both the community as a whole and the school district be considered in the future, we may reconsider. Thank you for your attention to this urgent matter and for your partnership in balancing historic preservation with modern realities of public education in North Dakota. Signed by the president of the school board and the school district superintendent.
Fun. Question for you. So, do they own the building?
Yes.
Okay.
So you pointed out that 1983, the owner objects. So does that fall under that?
Yes, but they are public
Public
owners, not private.
So, if we do not put this nomination forward, and do a determination of eligibility, we're still calling the building eligible, and we're still putting those restrictions on them. Basically, if there's federal funding for their future projects, do they realize that?
We did not have the conversation specifically saying that it could go forward as a DOE. I would say, since it's not an owner objection of a private property, that's not an option on the table for the board. Because that's not what was brought forward.
What prompted this nomination? Because you're a private entity, right?
Yeah, so,
Who initiated?
the authors are not initiated, they are professionals.
Yeah.
Okay. As it was explained to me, is the ladies who wanted it to go forward were doing it to open up grant opportunities for the school to fund the options. I know they referenced the project that they were talking about. They did have a local election, and the community voted down a big addition to the high school that would have then moved the elementary to that place. And if I'm incorrect in any of that, I know there are representatives from the school district here. Please feel free to correct me if I misstated.
That's a start.
Are the ladies who put this forward and paid for this, are they aware of the school district's opinions?
Yes.
Yep.
Jackie should be on the call.
Okay, does anybody want to?
Are there any other people?
Is Jackie wanting to speak first?
Somebody might have their, let me get back to my regular screen here so I can see. Okay, so Emily's got her hand up.
Yeah, and I see that Jackie's on the call, so maybe she can speak first. My comment was related to if federal funding is used, it will go through a Section 106 process that would see that these buildings are 50 years old or older, and there would be a review process of that time. Anyway, so the actually being nominated doesn't really impact the federal funding piece. But that's all I was gonna mention. But Jackie can speak more on the nomination process and the motivation to do that.
Second here. Whatever reason, I'm trying to turn unmute Jackie, and it's not. Jackie, are you able to speak? My computer's showing you muted and it won't let me unmute you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Okay. How this got started was after the public forum that the public did vote down the bond to build new. And their big concern emphasized was not to have this school just be run down property eventually because of neglect or something. And so we got together and we just start checking into what ideas, how can we raise funds? How can we preserve the school building? At one time, the board talked about having a CTE center. So this would be perfect for them to utilize, even if they do in the future, with the community allowing them to build more, another building up by the high school, that they could utilize this. And so we start checking into this. It was a long, hard process, but the history was just heart touching to us when we saw what the history was. And to our, we carried as far as we could, and then we were able to have these wonderful ladies help us to carry it the rest of the way. Now, the board has emphasized, they claim they did not have advance notice, but that's not true. The previous superintendent has had emails between with me over this, and they would not. I've asked high school principals for information. I went to the city, I went to the county. I had to find all this research myself by going through the newspaper. They were just not wanting us to do this. Now they claim we didn't let them know. We had board meetings, which school board meetings where the community tried to talk about stuff. And Jim Wyman did mention that he wanted to talk about the grants and the things that we have for ideas, but they would not listen. So we pursued this as options. Now, I spoke to a few community members that have heard the board side, and that Lydia did too today, and that they were saying there, wow, we need to get this done if that's option. See, I don't think they understand what really can be opened up for the community here. I'm pleased to know that the history for number one, because these architects and what they have is absolutely amazing.
Yes. And I'll add to that as well. I do have an education background. I did actually teach in Georgia in a room that was all concrete walls. And let me tell you, when I walked into this building, just because we were kind of assessing what are our options if we're not going to build new, we just were in awe of what was left here and preserved. And what it was like to walk into a room and have windows from floor to ceiling just about, you know. And so that really moved us. And like Jackie said, we were really shut out by the board because we had actually tried to be more practical about not building new, because there are many ways that, I mean, I know people have argued that thick concrete walls are a problem. And we have a member on our team who says, no, there's ways to work with those walls and just run whatever you need through them. You can leave original pipes in place. You just would relate it to the boiler and things like that. There's ways to do it, and they're doing it in other schools without the complication of demolishing thick walls and all of that. And the pictures we have are fantastic. We took them over a year ago, and someone went with us through the building. Dr. Lukens knew we were in the building. He knew we were talking about this. We've had meetings where we talked about it, where some of the board members have been there. So it just wasn't a point until we got this far to even present it, but we just feel like the community should have a vote in this. Why should 5 individuals make a decision when the community doesn't even know what's here? What is preserved in this history from an era that there's so few buildings to look at from the Art Deco era and some of these other time periods that are displayed in the architecture.
Are there additional discussion or points of discussion that people want to bring up?
I'll just caveat a little bit. I know Emily brought it up about the federal process in section 106 of what it triggers. And I know in the letter, they noted the restrictions in the process. So North Dakota Century Code 550207 is already in play. That particular law says that any building that is significant to the history of North Dakota, in the opinion of the director of the State Historical Society, cannot alter, demolish, or otherwise dispose, and there's some more words in there, of the property without permission from the historical. So that law is already in place. I know there's a lot of confusion when people hear about historic places. In other states, sometimes they do tie state and local laws to being listed in the National Register. North Dakota does not have any state laws that tie those together. And I'm not aware of any local laws in this particular community that does so either. And I just wanted to clarify that because I know that is one of the points and reasons for the objection.
I'm inclined to agree with Emily and Lorna. If the building's going to have problems holding up a future demolition or something because of federal funds, it's already going to have those problems. Because you're gonna have to do the review process and then it's gonna come straight back here. So I am inclined to still say we put the nomination forward.
And in the event that something along those lines would end up happening where that demolition is looked at, then at this point, there would already be this document with this National Register nomination, which may already help mitigate the loss of those buildings, if I'm correct, right? Correct, Lorna? Or Lorna? So I think that having this document also is very good as both an architect that sees the side of, yes, buildings get to a point where there's that investment on return where it is really difficult to keep maintaining them. But at the same time, wearing that preservation hat where we want to make sure that we are documenting and recording these buildings. I wear both hats, so I see both sides of the coin here. And having this document may, in the event that that's the way the district decides to go, may actually help you with either finding additional funds or mitigating that loss. So I think in certain ways, this may actually help either way.
Yeah, because a lot of the times what you do to mitigate a building being torn down or something is run of these to document it as thoroughly as possible. And it does give you that tax incentive, the ability to apply for those. So I do think that it might not be as much of a seems.
Well, if there is no further discussion, we shall vote. Oh, sorry, yes,
Can I just do my little?
absolutely.
And this is, for full transparency, I've been a superintendent of the school district for 4 months. So I'm kind of learning the ebbs and flows that come along with being in a new community and a new school district. From my perspective, as the operational manager of the entire school district, my concern with this nomination is not necessarily that, like I said, in part of our writing, it feels like it is an honor because truly it is to have a building considered for such a nomination is an honor. My concern being is the fiscal aspect of our school district being one part of it. The other side of it for me, especially in my 4th month, I knew nothing of this process or that this is going on until 3 weeks ago. So me trying to learn all the nuances of leading a school district for the first time and having this thrown into it really took me back. It's learning a new position is challenging to begin with. In no way, shape, or form am I saying that this wouldn't be something that as a school district, we wouldn't be more supportive of, further down the road. The time at this particular time being, looking at our school district, looking at our community, and looking at the next 5, 10, 15 years, I just think where we're sitting right now, this, as a school district, is not our best course of action moving forward. I have some very deep reservations about that simply because of the unknown for us as a school district. But at the same time, as this evolves, and if, like I said, 2-3 years down the road, this nomination would be up again, it might be something we'd be on the other side of. It's just, there's a lot of concern as a school district as to where we go from here moving forward. Should this nomination be approved at both this level and at the federal level, what's that going to look like moving forward? And to be honest with you, I haven't had the opportunity to educate myself enough as to what that would look like. And I would like the time to be able to do that.
Can I say something, Joe?
Yes.
As board president, I'm not going to get into all the politics and all that stuff. Remember that as a school, And we're honored that this is being considered for that. But remember, foremost, our student safety is number one. And this older building, there's a lot of things that need to be done. Our boiler system is going out. We have a lot of things, and that's a concern that we have to do what's best for our students. And the air quality, we can't use the electrical system to cool down. We just have some concerns just for our students. That's my case. Okay.
I appreciate everybody in the building here and joining us virtually for sharing their opinions and their points of discussion here. Is there anyone else that would like to? Yes, Rick's got his hand up.
I would like to make a motion to table consideration of this until out time for further consideration between the nominating party and the Harvey School Board.
Okay, is there a second?
Do we have to decide on the motion that's already on the table before we can do that?
I don't know.
No, you have to have a motion first and then table them.
We did have.
Yeah, I made a motion that we accept with comments.
Yeah, so,
Okay, yes.
Yeah. So, well, yes, correct, procedurally, we need to vote on the motion that's already on, and then based on of whatever the result of that is, then we can consider the other motion.
I don't.
No, it happens that with the extra discussions.
yeah.
Okay, so we have to go back to the first.
So I'll just reread it, and we can still, if there's more discussion, but the current motion on the table is to approve the nomination to be forwarded to the keeper pending the minor edits are made as discussed by the board. There was a second. But
I don't think you have to have a motion in order to table.
right, but this motion was made first.
Yeah, we do have a motion on the table.
No, I understand that, but then you table that motion. You're tabling that motion.
Oh, that's not what.
That's what he's asking to table that motion.
I thought you tabled the nomination.
Yeah, he wanted.
Oh,
Rick, you wanted to table the nomination, right?
Yes.
I want to table the vote on the nomination there.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Okay.
So procedurally, that is something we can do, that is to vote to table this motion entirely, or no?
Oh, yeah, we can vote on that, yeah. I've never had it happen, so. Okay, so is there a second to the
You need
table?
a second or table.
I will second.
So the motion for approval has been tabled.
no, you have to vote on the table.
Complicated for. So we shall vote that. All in favor of tabling the motion to accept the, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Rick and Kristen,
Nay.
Kristen? Okay, and
Opposed, say nay.
nay,
Nay.
okay. So it's 50-50, 3 and 3, since we.
Happens then.
You, as chairman, I don't. Generally, the chairman does vote.
We're missing a member, right?
Yes.
Do we need to wait and give him the opportunity to vote?
He wasn't. That would be a table.
Yeah, no, we have a quorum, don't we?
We do have a quorum, it's just that the vote is
Right.
evenly split through.
Right.
Looks like we'll have old business for the next meeting.
Well, there must be some, I mean, if we have a quorum, there must be some procedure to break a tie. And I'm sorry, I just don't
Yep.
know.
So I think I need to recommend we do a minor break and I will pray I can find that answer.
Great.
That's acceptable? Yes. Okay. 10 minutes? Is that reasonable?
Can you find the answer in 10?
I think so.
Okay.
Because I will call down some people who run our other board and
All right, then we will have a 10-minute break. Right, it's right back. I feel bad, but I just haven't seen the point. Yeah.
I guess too, I have a little confusion. So if the public ownership of the building, that means if we feel it is eligible, do we need to vote in favor regard, like whether they object or not? That's what,
So apparently we only need to do that if the private owner says no.
yeah, that's, I mean, so public ownership,
Yeah.
as long as we feel it's eligible, we should vote for it
Yeah.
regardless of what it,
It definitely is eligible.
yeah.
And like I said before, there's no, like, the only reason would be to give him more time to come up
Yeah.
to speed, but at the same time, it's still eligible. It's still gonna have all those restrictions.
Yeah.
It's still gonna get reviewed under section 106 if it gets federal funds. Nothing at the state level is gonna stop you from adding the plumbing or anything. Even if it's listed, you can still do that.
you can still make changes to the building.
Yeah, yep. My high school in Illinois was torn down because the city tore it down. They didn't have to do any history. It was listed. And they just tore it down because they needed to build a new school and they didn't use federal funds, so there was no restrictions. So I just,
And I'm hired quite often to document buildings in a very similar fashion, if not using the National Register as a way to mitigate the loss. of those
Exactly,
buildings
yeah.
anyway. So.
and that's, yeah, we both literally do this.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just don't see the reason to wait.
Sure.
May as well get it on the record now, and
These meetings usually go.
there's so much seriously.
I got the sense that that might be the case.
Don't be
Usually
scared.
we're thinking about right now.
Yeah.
My crew is coming in from the field and they're just going to invade my house.
So, the longer it runs just means I don't have to go to the office when I go back to Dickens.
There you go.
And start my Halloween early.
Were you a student at this high school, sir? Were you a student at this high school?
I was a teacher at the high school for 38 years, not been on the board since.
What did you teach?
I was agricultural education.
Okay. FFA kind of stuff?
I was in high school, but
Well, chief, then you should understand the parliamentary procedure.
yeah, I do. That posters fail because as the president, she can make or break a tie, and she just made a tie. So it's 3-3, so it'll fail.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
Okay, but, and your person not being your, no, because you have a form.
Okay.
You're elected not to be here, so once you have a form, you're legal. So most people don't vote, what she just did. She didn't make a tie, or she could break a tie, so she just made a tie. Cause that wasn't done.
Chairmanship should be done cases. Last.
But I didn't want to say that. That's all.
Good to know, though.
I didn't.
I'm not the strongest.
I am not either. I'm the CEO. Have I served on this board? Or yes.
I'm on a couple others right now, so I'm starting to understand some of those intricacies.
I'm on others, but I've never gotten to a point where.
Needed this kind of, yeah.
It's usually fairly.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, gee.
Oh, yeah. This is a loaded question, I'm sorry. Interesting, how it's just. What do you?
I think from so.
I had a friend, who. You raised involved. You make sense. This. I. I'm so glad I got large. Was it just like, oh, I never seen a design. It's cool. Oh, pretty. Okay, you got it. You just. Okay. How was your daughter? Oh, that's funny for Halloween too. Eight.
Yeah. That's right.
No, yeah. You didn't see that. 11 years of farm. So much. Slug around in the mud lately. You never push your for weather. No, you really don't. Like I said, last year it was so hot that I was walking around like this for half a day. 2 years ago, it was so cold.
Yeah, 2 years ago, we had lots.
Yeah.
We didn't have snow 2 years ago, but it was so cold.
That was at 18 inches or whatever a couple years ago. It was right.
It was like 6 years. We had some closer, I was from Minnesota. We had on. Oh. Multiple. I remember. And it was just a few over so fast, and just be like the dumbest off. I go to.
Oh my God. See, I grew up in Illinois, so we never had snow.
All the things. If I'm
not supposed to. No, you are supposed to vote. I barely did that. All members are voting. I did have to get into the bylaws so to see if I don't remember a tiebreaker in the bylaws, but I need to check that.
I'm guessing that it would be the chair tiebreaker, but the chair's already voted, so.
My dates on the same one. Okay.
I did, good job. So what I found in our, it's been 10 minutes. I talked to our other board secretary of the historical board. Based on her expertise as well, and what I know and where to look. The chairman does get a vote on the board. Robert's rule, it says in the bylaws, follow Robert's rules of order. Within Robert's rules of order, it says that for a motion to pass, it has to have, how is it stated? And there's a tie, then the motion fails unless there is already an established way for tiebreaker. Looking in our bylaws, we do not have an established tiebreaker. So that pertains to the motion made to table. Now,
That means we're back to the motion to,
that would mean back to the original motion. And now I will caveat that because it may come up. Our bylaws do say for a nomination to go for, to be approved to go forward, it must be a majority. So if
it's tie again.
it's tie again, it fails. So
Okay. Well, then, now we must vote for the original to approve the nomination, original motion to approve the nomination with the suggested edits and modifications as discussed. So all in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so 4, okay,
And
and
opposed?
Rick, where's Rick?
I'll vote opposed just for the
Okay,
tabling. I'm not
And-
objecting to the nomination.
And Rick?
I'm the vote to abstain.
Abstain.
okay.
So, the motion was accepted. Thank you all for working with us on this one. Do we need to do anything else on that one then?
Nope, that is that
That concludes-
motion. So just to recap for everybody so that it's clear, the motion did pass to forward the nomination to the keeper of the National Register pending the edits that were discussed during the meeting are made.
Can I just say that would be a good time to use to get up to speed and talk to the ladies while the edits are happening. It's not an immediate process. So
And I'll caveat as well, there is a process with, once it does get submitted to the keeper, you can send additional comments. I will forward your letter, but you can also send additional during their comment period. Normally, it's easier for me to tell you when that is, but with the shutdown, I can work with you, Aaron, if you'd like, send you an email when it does get submitted. And because they have a check-in part, and then that's when they'll be able to start doing that. The way they officially open their comment period is they publish it in the Federal Register. And then it's a 15-day comment period. But again, I will send your letter along with the nomination.
Good.
I have a question. If it meets the criteria, do they ever say no?
No, so they look at the two things. Can people object? Is there a majority objection? Because that will tell them it's going to be a determination or not. Then they look at, did the nomination, one, make the case that it's eligible, or does it need change? If they feel it needs substantial changes based on the criteria for registering, they can kick it back and they will tell me exactly what they think needs changed. Or they would accept it. But they base that portion on, is it eligible? Not after they've already reviewed if there's ownership consent.
Okay, well, I guess we'll move on to the next nomination, which is the Pleasant Form